And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show with the international mystery surrounding Edward Snowden, the former U.S. intelligence contractor who leaked documents about the United States' secret domestic and global surveillance programs. Snowden reportedly landed in Moscow Sunday after leaving Hong Kong, but his exact whereabouts are unknown. He was expected to fly from Moscow to Cuba today, but journalists aboard the flight said his seat was empty. It was believed Snowden's final destination would be Ecuador, which has confirmed it was considering an asylum request for Snowden. He has not been seen publicly or photographed since his reported arrival in Moscow on Sunday afternoon from Hong Kong. The developments come just days after the United States publicly revealed it had filed espionage charges against Snowden for theft of government property, unauthorized communication of national defense information, and willful communication of classified communications intelligence to an unauthorized person. The criminal complaint was dated June 14th, but only came to light on Friday. The United States has also revoked his passport. On Sunday, Snowden was allowed to fly out of Hong Kong, even though Washington asked the Chinese territory to arrest him on espionage charges. In a statement, the Hong Kong government says documents submitted by the U.S. did not, quote, fully comply with the legal requirements under Hong Kong law, and it had no legal basis to prevent him from leaving. In addition, the Hong Kong government said in a written statement that it wanted more information about alleged hacking of computer systems in Hong Kong by U.S. government agencies. WikiLeaks is playing a central role in aiding Snowden's travels. A WikiLeaks activist named Sarah Harrison reportedly accompanied Snowden on his flight from Hong Kong to Moscow. In an interview with the New York Times, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange said, quote, "Mr. Snowden requested our expertise and assistance. We've been involved in very similar legal and diplomatic and geopolitical struggles to preserve the organization and its ability to publish." Snowden, who turned 30 Friday, had anticipated risks for exposing the NSA's surveillance program.
You can't come forward against the world's most powerful intelligence agencies and be completely free from risk, because they're such powerful adversaries that no one can meaningfully oppose them. If they want to get you, they'll get you in time. But at the same time, you have to make a determination about what it is that's important to you. And if living unfreely but comfortably is something you're willing to accept, and I think many of us are, it's the human nature. You can get up every day, you can go to work, you can collect your large paycheck for relatively little work against the public interest, and go to sleep at night after watching your shows. But if you realize that that's the world that you helped create, and it's going to get worse with the next generation and the next generation who extend the capabilities of this sort of architecture of oppression, you realize that you might be willing to accept any risk. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is, so long as the public gets to make their own decisions about how that's applied.
That was Edward Snowden being interviewed by The Guardian's Glenn Greenwald, filmed by Laura Poitras earlier this month in Hong Kong. Since then, the former contractor has revealed a secret court order showing that the U.S. government had forced the telecom giant Verizon to hand over the phone records of millions of Americans. He also revealed the existence of a secret program called PRISM, which internal NSA documents claim gives the agency access to data held by Google, Facebook, Apple, and other U.S. internet giants. For more, we go to Glenn Greenwald, the journalist who broke the story. He is a columnist and blogger for The Guardian, also a constitutional lawyer. His recent piece is called "On the Espionage Act Charges Against Edward Snowden." First of all, Glenn Greenwald, well, welcome back to Democracy Now! Do you know where Edward Snowden is right now?
No, I don't. I know what news reports are indicating with regard to his whereabouts, and outside of the small circle of people who are traveling with him, it seems that nobody really knows at the moment where he is.
Where do you know he last was, where we last know where he was?
I mean, I haven't spoken with him personally since there were reports that he left Hong Kong, and so I can't say with any first-hand knowledge that he's been anywhere once he left Hong Kong. I only know what the news media is reporting on that, and there seemed to be confirmation that he was on a flight from Hong Kong to Moscow, that the plan was that he would land in Moscow, spend the night either in the airport or in an embassy of Venezuela or Ecuador, and then travel on to Havana on a flight this morning, and there are lots of reporters on that flight, all of whom are reporting that he doesn't seem to be on that flight. And so the question is, was there an alternative travel arrangement made for him to go to Ecuador or somewhere else, whether it be an alternative commercial flight or a private plane, or has he been detained by the Russian government, which said that it wouldn't detain him, or has something else happened to him? I don't think anybody knows at this point. I certainly don't.
Glenn Greenwald, Ed Snowden turned 30 on Friday. Also, then the charges against him were made known. Can you explain what he has been charged with by the United States?
He's been charged so far with 3 felony counts, one of which is essentially stealing property that doesn't belong to him. The other 2 are the much more serious ones. They're offenses under the Espionage Act of 1917 that has been amended several times since then, and the statute, the provisions of that law under which he's been charged were amended most recently in 1950. And they essentially accuse him of releasing classified information that he knew or should have known was likely to harm the United States or result in benefit to its adversaries. This is the statute that, until President Obama was inaugurated, had only been used a grand total of 3 times in all of American history to prosecute leakers, people who disclose classified information, as opposed to those who actually do espionage, which is passing secrets to an enemy of the United States or selling it. But for pure leakers, it's almost never been used. There's only been 3 cases before Obama, one of which was Daniel Ellsberg. Since President Obama's inauguration, there have now been 7. He's now the 7th leaker or whistleblower who has been prosecuted under the statute, so more than double the number of all previous presidents combined. The charges at the moment each carry a penalty of 10 years in prison, so you're talking about 30 years in prison. But he's not even been indicted yet. The pattern of the Obama administration has been to add many more charges once there's an indictment, and so it's almost certain that he will face life imprisonment if the United States ever apprehends him and is able to bring him to trial.
On Sunday, House Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Rogers said the United States should use every legal avenue to bring Edward Snowden back to face espionage charges. He was speaking to host David Gregory on NBC's Meet the Press.
So you think about what he says he wants and what his actions are, it defies logic. He has taken information that does not belong to him. It belongs to the people of the United States. He has jeopardized our national security. I disagree with the reporter. Clearly, the bad guys have already changed their way. Remember, these are counterterrorism programs, essentially, and we have seen that bad guys overseas, terrorists who are committing and plotting attacks on the United States and our allies, have changed the way they operate. We've already seen that. To say that that is not harmful to the national security of the United States or our safety is just dead wrong. They should use every legal avenue we have to bring him back to the United States. And listen, if he believes that he's doing something good, and by the way, he went outside all of the whistleblower avenues that were available to anyone in this government, including people who have classified information. We get 2 or 3 visits from whistleblowers every single week in the committee, and we investigate everyone thoroughly. He didn't choose that route. If he really believes he did something good, he should get on a plane, come back, and face the consequences of his actions.
Is he gone? Do you think he's gone? Not to return?
I'm not sure I would say gone forever. I do think that we'll continue with extradition activities wherever he ends up, and we should continue to find ways to return him to the United States and get the United States public's information back.
House Intelligence Chair Mike Rogers, your response to this, Glenn Greenwald.
First of all, there's this constant claim that's made about how Democrats and Republicans are at each other's throat and have radically different views of the world that are irreconcilable. Mike Rogers is one of the most right-wing members of the Republican House caucus when it comes to national security issues, and yet he sounds exactly the same as Dianne Feinstein, as every single Democrat in the Senate who is speaking about these issues. There's absolutely no division, and there never is on these questions. The political class binds together every single time time to declare to be an enemy anybody who brings transparency to what it is that they're doing. Secondly, the idea that he has harmed national security is truly laughable. If you go and look at what it is that we published, the only things that we published were reports that the U.S. government is spying not on the terrorists or the Chinese government, but on American citizens indiscriminately, hundreds of millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions at a time. The terrorists have long known that the U.S. government is trying to listen in on their telephone calls and emails. We didn't tell them anything they didn't know. The only thing that wasn't known was that the bulk of the spying apparatus is directed not at the terrorists, but at the American citizenry and at innocent people around the world. That's the only thing that has been damaged, not the national security of the United States, but the reputation and credibility of American political officials like Mike Rogers and Dianne Feinstein and all the executive branch officials who have lied about this program to Congress and who have implemented it in secret. And then the final issue is the idea that he could have used whistleblower channels. He would have ended up having to go to the very same members of Congress who think that not only are these programs good, but that they ought to remain secret. And you have two Democratic members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Ron Wyden and Mark Udall, who have been screaming for 3 years, saying there are secret things going on inside the NSA based on secret law of the Obama administration that is so warped and distorted that Americans would be stunned to learn what the government is doing to them in terms of spying. And yet even those members of the Intelligence Committee, Senators Udall and Wyden, either lacked the courage or were incapable of even disclosing to the American people what they had discovered that was so alarming to them. It took Edward Snowden to come forward the way he did and make us all as citizens around the world publicly aware of what the government is doing to us so that we could have an open and informed debate about what is being done. Anyone who says it should have been done in another way has the obligation to identify what this other way was that could have informed the people of this country and the world about what the NSA is doing.
We're going to break, then come back to this discussion. And I want to say, as we're speaking in Vietnam right now, the foreign minister of Ecuador, Patino, is holding a news conference. And he is just reading a letter that Edward Snowden has written to the president of Ecuador, Correa, asking for political asylum. And in it, he is saying that it's the U.S. government that's intercepting freedom of speech. Congress and media is involved as well, and he says, and they're accusing me of being a traitor. They want to imprison me or execute me for telling people this, he said. We'll come back to this discussion with Glenn Greenwald. He's the journalist who leaked the story of the NSA whistleblower, Edward Snowden. They met in Hong Kong, where Edward Snowden had gone to release the information he had gotten as he was a contractor for Hamilton Booz Allen. Booz Allen Hamilton, sorry, when he was working for Booz Allen Hamilton as a contractor for the NSA in Hawaii. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back with Glenn Greenwald in a moment.